Why did you want to do that?
Well, I tell you what, it was actually Piers Morgan who very early on, when I was sort of ranting at anybody, not ranting, that's the wrong word, but sort of bleeding at anybody and, and trying to sort of make sense of what was going on. He just said, you've got to write this down, you've got to write this down. And I didn't really, because there didn't seem time to write it down. But he said, just write words that you'll remember, because you know that strange feeling when time kind of contracts and expands when you go through anything? I think we've all had a little bit of that, haven't we, during COVID and during the pandemic. He said, you won't remember some of these things. And also, I was taking huge amounts of notes. So in the very early days when Derek was sick and I was trying to get through to hospitals, you would getting different people each time. Often they were people that were not actually treating Derek because they were too busy. And it was other people who were, kind of trying to sort of help out and pass on information to worried relatives. And I began to take lots of notes about things like oxygen levels and liver enzymes and everything. So I've got all this strange kind of medical book on my shelves in box files. But actually, of course, it's the emotion that really needs to be processed. So then, as time went on, people have been so kind to me and people have shared with me lots of things they've been through, not just to do with COVID, although, let's be honest, there's hundreds of thousands that are still suffering in this country alone because of various things to do with COVID, whether economically or medically. It's had a huge toll on everybody. But also things they've been through in their past life, people they'd lost, people they'd worried for, people that have had terrible diagnoses that they've had to live with. And it was really supportive to me. And also I was lucky enough to have people that could offer advice on kind of techniques to get you through crises. So I kind of wanted to share those really and give, and actually I think hope has got me through this so far, touching all wood. There's no wood in here, it's all Formica. No. But touching some good luck, hope has got me through. And it's nice to be able to share some of the things I've learned.
There's a great anecdote that you tell about one of your neighbours who you'd never actually talked to before. I think you'd sort of nodded in the street. And I think this is one of the great stories of COVID. It actually has brought people together, and particularly in big cities where a lot of people don't know their neighbours. But this lady had been through not something identical to you, but her husband had been knocked off his bike, I think, and had gone into a coma. And she told you some really, really interesting things, didn't she?
Yes, she did. So she literally knocked on my door one day. And as you say, we'd sort of said hi as we walked along the street, aware that we must live in the same street. But as you say, in big cities, very often, you're sort of coming home to sleep and rest, aren't you, and going out again. And of course, everybody was contained within a few hundred yards for long periods of this year or the last 12 months. And she just came over with a cake and said, look, I don't know what you're going through, but I understand a little bit of it because my husband was in a coma. He was told he might never recover. He was told he'd be brain damaged. But actually, I know what it's like, and you've got to take care of you, and you've got to eat well, and you've got to keep going, and you've got to try and, find a way through however it is you can do it, whether it be through prayer or, whatever you need to do, because there will be some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. And there always is, isn't it? Even if it's not the thing you dream of, even if it's not, you don't get to have everything that you want to happen out of any kind of crisis. You can move forward if you do it positively. And she's come every single Saturday since about last May, to the point now when actually the kids start saying, I hope it's red velvet this week. And I'm like, right, we can't actually expect this as some kind of fourth emergency service, Susie the cake lady. But she just does it because I think she knows what it's like, and she knows how a cake can make you smile, and that kind of contact can make you smile.
Well, let's go back to the beginning, because probably the majority of my listeners won't know Derek. You explain how you met in the book, and I mean he was a big figure in politics in the early years of the Blair government. He was an advisor to Peter Mandelson, got himself into a couple of scrapes, it has to be said, and he was one of these characters, and I knew him a bit at the time. Larger than life, I think, is a phrase that you could use about Derek, and he's had quite a lot of highs and lows over the years, and he'd sort of met you. I think you calmed him down a little bit, or maybe he calmed you down. I don't know which it is. But he had got himself into a really good position, hadn't he?
Yeah, he is very colourful. Derek always has been. I didn't know him through those political days, but people like yourself that did usually fall into two camps, with either kind of, oh my God, that ghastly Derek Draper, or oh my God, I love Derek Draper. And it actually doesn't seem to matter what side of the political fence.
I went through periods of both.
Did you?
Yes.
Funny enough, so have I. So, and he kind of speaks his mind, and he's passionate about things, and, and all of that is there. And there's a lot of fire and spirit and all of that. And I guess you take the rough with the smooth. What has been lovely, weirdly, actually, not answer your question, because I know I definitely want to answer all your questions, is that actually in the kind of, when it sort of first became known how sick he was, people from all sides of the political fence kind of came out of the woodwork and sort of were remembering things that had happened when they were on campaign trails, or when they were at party conferences, or when they'd rowed on air about something. And had so much affection for him in the spirit that political people do, it seems to me. Whether they sort of agree or disagree, they're all passionate about solving things, aren't they? And so I kind of kept on thinking to myself, God, I really need you to get more better, because I'd love you to know about some of this. Because I think he, as you say, had a breakdown. I mean, there's no question about it. He had a complete breakdown. He went to America. He retrained as a psychologist, came back and met me not long after he'd come back to this country. And he was a very different person, his friends that knew him before, in some ways, although there was lots of the ridiculousness still there. And he got himself to a happy place. He was enjoying his work. He was enjoying his life. He loved family life. And it's one of those things, as life does deal to us all, that comes almost from nowhere. For me, it came kind of out of the headlines and into our lives in a sort of extraordinary way.
Well, I can remember he came into this building to do my book club podcast when his book came out. Was it 2018, 2019?
Right.
And he turned up, long shorts, baggy shirt.
God, this all sounds horribly familiar.
We did the interview, and at the end of it, he said to me, he said, "I'm really sorry about what happened," which is something that I won't go into particularly now. And I just thought, you've got over all of that. You're in a good place now. And I was actually really happy for him, because I know that he'd been...
So had you actually head-butted properly full on?
We had. It was all over the Damien McBride 2009 red rag thing.
Okay.
And...
Right.
It actually really pleased me that he said that, and I just thought that sort of, well, I'd drawn a line under it a long time ago. But let's go forward to March 2019. Sorry, 2020. You describe in the book how you first became aware of COVID in the Good Morning Britain newsroom, and it was something that didn't really hit home until it had become a thing.
I mean, I don't know whether you felt the same, but even before we all started talking about it on air, there were little things, weren't there, drifting through. This terrible virus happening, far away, and I remember thinking, that sounds awful, those poor people, But it wasn't something that you particularly felt people would be waking up in the morning in the middle of the Brexit, shenanigans that we were all trying to kind of piece together and work out. And then I can remember distinctly being on air and seeing a newsfeed say early in the morning saying that Wuhan had locked down and no one was allowed to go out. I can remember saying, what do you mean they can't go out? They can't just make people stay inside. That would never happen here. We'd never do that. It seemed unreal, like a science fiction movie or something. And of course, not only have we had it here, we've done it here, and we've lived with the consequences of something terrible, haven't we, as a nation?
And Derek contracted COVID very early on, I mean, before the end of March. And when did you first realise that it was COVID?
Oh, I mean, literally as I called the ambulance. So he had no cough and no temperature at all, even when he was fighting to breathe. And at that point, the focus was very much on, respiratory failure. Sorry, I can't speak. My lisp is getting in the way. Acute respiratory failure. And so, we were almost actively being discouraged to waste hospitals' time if we didn't have those symptoms, because if you list the symptoms of COVID, it's pretty much anything that could ever happen to anybody. It's huge. It's impossible to know what it is. And it was really when I just thought, you look terrible. You look absolutely terrible. He'd had a bad shoulder and he was sort of complaining about that and, and the painkillers he was on. And it was all kind of muddled over the period of about 2 or 3 days. And then from that, he went into the ambulance and until a couple of weeks ago, never came home again,
And he said to you, as he was put in the ambulance, you will see me again.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been
It was terrifying because by then they'd got an oxygen mask on him and was sort of like getting him in as quickly as possible. And he'd quickly hurried the kids inside. And he just said to me, this isn't the last time you're going to see me, Kate. You will see me again. But even the fact that he'd thought to say that must have been on some level he was worried that it wasn't going to be. I knew that I was thinking that as well. And, for a long time, for many, many, many months, I wondered if it would be. And in a strange way, to be honest, he is very different now. And we don't know what of the Derek Draper that got into the ambulance can be recovered still.
Well, we're going to be speaking to you for the whole hour. Kate's happy to take calls as well, if you'd like. She's quite looking forward to it. I think she thinks that
Don't ask me to say acute respiratory failure
She
again.
thinks nobody's going to phone in, but I reassured her that you will. So don't let me down. 0345 6060 973 if you've got a question that you'd like to put to Kate before 8 o'clock. Her book is called The Power of Hope. You can watch us on Global Player or YouTube, on the LBC Facebook page or Twitter feed as well.
0345 6060 973.
Kate Garraway is with us for the hour. You can watch us on the Global Player or the LBC YouTube channel, Facebook or Twitter feeds. We're going to be taking your calls after 12:30. The number to call 0345 6060 973. The heroes of your book are your children, I think.
Do you?
In that the way you describe how they've coped, I just think, and you obviously didn't want to burden them, if that's the right word, with all of the details. You wanted to keep their hope alive, and that's part of the title of the book. And they come out, I think, as sort of brilliantly adjusted children in this.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think time will tell. I mean, I think in different ways and at different points, they've both obviously been affected. I mean, you couldn't not be affected by it. And they've both coped with it in slightly different ways. But it's a huge thing, I think. And Derek, obviously, he was their dad. I mean, he's a huge presence in their life. And they were very close to him. Darcy particularly, I think. Darcy is kind of like Derek with long hair, mercifully slightly different physical appearance, mercifully for Darcy. Doesn't have the beard yet. And I think, it's very possible for them to feel slightly adrift in a way throughout all of this, as well as heartbroken. So I think but then the other wonderful thing about children is that they do sort of understand, don't they, that the need to sort of grab life and fill life with joy. And I think there's a moment which I think is in the book where I was very conflicted when I saw them doing something that I knew Derek would love. There's I think sometimes, grandparents dote and, I don't know, friends can sort of be proud of your kids, but sometimes it's only mum and dad or, the partners that are raising the kids that sort of truly get those stupid little things. And I would see them do something like that I knew Derek would love and instantly feel tragic because he wasn't there to enjoy it.
There's a really good example you give of that when Susanna Reid sent over a box of 2,000 Lego pieces, and immediately Billy wanted to start building.
He wanted to build it there and then, and I was thinking, we haven't got time to build 2,000 pieces of Lego. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute, this is your childhood. You know, for me, it's another day where we've got through it and Derek hasn't died. Yeah. But for you, it's another day of your childhood and we've got to do it. And actually, they really helped me because they forced me to, put the phone down, leave it not on silent, leave it so I could hear the phone call if necessary, and just totally get involved in Lego. And I think we were absorbed by the fact that I couldn't follow the rules. And, there's something wonderful about Lego. It's solid. There's rules. If you follow them, things get built. And in a world where there weren't any rules and chaos was all around us, it was a great moment. And they really helped me. You're right. They are the heroes.
I'm just imagining Ben Shepherd listening to this now saying, Kate Garraway not following the rules? Surely not. It's so difficult to squeeze everything that's happened into this. But, I mean, Derek was probably in about the most poorly state that anyone could be in. And literally you were fearing the next phone call. You were fearing what the news would be. Well, I mean, how do you cope with that when day after day you're thinking the worst?
Well, every phone call they prepared you that he might die. They'd say that, you have to realise he might not make this. The phrase they kept saying was he's hanging by a thread. It's kind of impossible to take that in, really, isn't it? Because what are you meant to do with that information? How do you prepare yourself? And I think what I tried to do was sort of just learn to manage the fear, because I think that's what we've all had to do through the pandemic. And when I first started writing this, of course, I assumed that COVID would be a ghastly period of our lives that we'd be looking back on and we wouldn't want to be reminded of. But now we're at the place where we're hopefully just starting to emerge and think, well, we're all changed and we've all had to learn to live with something fearful and move forward living with something fearful. And that is kind of life a trick that we need to learn for living life anyway, isn't it? I say to friends, the thing is that I now feel like at any minute the world could be snatched from me, but really that could happen any day to any of us. And so kind of managing the fear of it and going forward, I think is one of the things that hopefully we can all take with us to make our life richer. But I don't think there is a way to manage it other than perhaps breaking down. And there's some techniques I put in the book where you can break down things into bite-sized chunks and focus on things to manage that anxiety. But the truth is that he was, according to the team that were treating him in that period, and still is in a sense, the sickest person that they've ever treated that's lived. And that last bit of the sentence is, I guess, the thing that makes me lucky, because there's lots of people that haven't got the chance to work out how to live with uncertainty because they've got the worst kind of certainty that they've lost someone they love, So it's a weird mixture of gratefulness and fear all at the same time.
The children, clearly, from reading the book, have been your strength in a way, because they prevented you from what I think a lot of people would have done in these circumstances, just completely collapsing. And as a mother, you don't have any choice. You've got to go on with all this emotional turmoil going on in your head, but there's got to be some degree of routine and normality for the children. Yeah. And of course, during all of that period, there was lockdown, so they were at home all the time. There was no sort of respite for you in a way. Do I mean
and
respite?
Probably
do you know what I mean?
For them,
what do you know what I mean?
As well, you're very intensely, aren't you? I think we've all been very intensely locked into a situation where we're on top of each other, and also, actually, for some people, very, very lonely. I mean, it's a weird mixture of being cramped and apart, isn't it, from your usual support network that come in to help in situations like this and rush to the aid of people when we're in a crisis. They have been amazing, actually, and they have been ploughing forward and still are ploughing forward. But I'm very aware of sort of trying to be mum and dad, but also dad is here. Dad is at home now and he's present, but it's a different dad at the moment. It's
how different. I mean, tell us about how he came home and what's happened since.
So it was a strange thing.
Because obviously this isn't in the book, this bit, is it?
No, because I finished this sort of quite close to the deadline.
Really? You astonished me.
A couple of months after. So I think it was sort of mid-February. And in the run-up to Christmas, things had been looking more and more positive, I think, as a country. And then for Derek as well. His communication seemed to be improving and he seemed to be rousing. And then just as we all went into the lockdown that we're now only just emerging from, he seemed to sort of shut down in a strange way. And nobody could really, all the way through, there's been lots of I don't knows, because there is no data on somebody who suffered COVID this way. So therefore, in a weird way, Derek is kind of a test case, which I think he quite like. I mean, already some of the things they've learnt with him, they're using in pathways for other people that sadly have had the disease since, which is a nice thing, I guess, to come out of it. So there wasn't a way of knowing, but collectively I couldn't visit. And between us, we were talking about how some of the therapies that they might use couldn't happen because of, restrictions within the hospital and within, the room he was in. And so in the end, it was a kind of hold your nose and jump situation, really, which was, if he wasn't going to change quickly, maybe the best hope for rousing him more cognitively and making him more conscious was to bring him home. And then, of course, you have the huge logistics of what that means, that kind of 24-hour care within the home. But the moment he came through the door was one of just incredible elation, really. He was crying, so he was showing that emotion.
Aware.
You see, I hesitate. He definitely knows he's home. He definitely knows he's home.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
It's a huge thing. I mean, there have been periods where I didn't know if he'd even know who I was. And we would be caring for somebody that was effectively a stranger, which would be terrifying for him and strange for us as a family. I mean, unthinkable. So he definitely knows who I am. He definitely knows he's home. Whether he also can't access the ability to say things. It's a really strange place he's in. Sometimes he can respond to extraordinary things, really specific things that, he remembered the surname of our accountant randomly when I was trying to tell him something, because I just keep talking to him as if it's usual. And he just suddenly said the surname of our accountant, really random. Not that he's not a lovely accountant, but, and then the next minute he just can't speak and just seems to kind of disappear in himself with a stare. And physically, of course, he is needing everything done for him, he needs to be, he's been fed through a tube and in his tummy, so that makes things very different. For me, it's a different sort of way of living, isn't it? And I've always been the cook, but it's different now. He can swallow, and he can swallow some things, so we're hoping that might progress, but we're not there yet. He has spoken, but sometimes he just can't, and it's really hard to unravel what it's all about.
And how have your children managed this? Because they will have this image of their strong dad.
Yeah.
And they're with him now at home when he's there, but he's not the dad that they knew. How are they coping with that?
I think they're coping extraordinarily. I mean, they sort of chat away to him. They seem to sort of instinctively understand not to ask for things they can't provide. It's incredible, and I'm so proud of them. They don't seem to go and ask him to be anything that he can't be. They will talk to him all the time. They would chatter away to him. They hug him all the time now that they can at last hug him. I mean, that physicality is huge, I think, for everybody. We've all missed hugs, haven't we? And they can do all that. And they seem to have adjusted to the change in his appearance. He's lost a huge amount of weight and he's physically very, very changed. But they just say, he's dad, and they seem to be able to make him smile as well in a way that's reassuring, because it's the things he would have found funny before. So they are rather magical, actually.
We'll talk a little bit more in just a moment, Kate. We're talking about Kate's book, The Power of Hope. If you'd like to ask her a question, the number 0345 6060 973 LBC. Let's go to your calls, 0345 6060 973. Sheila is in Church Langley in Essex. Hi, Sheila.
Oh, hi. Hello, Iain.
Hello.
Kate. Lovely to talk to you.
Hello, Sheila.
And,
nice to talk to you.
I've been following your story with Derek, Kate, and it was what happened here, Kate, was I lost my son, Darren. He was a detective sergeant in the Met, 49, in a very similar way to Derek.
Did you?
Except you've got Derek, which is good. The other thing was my husband had a severe stroke at the same time, which left him sort of almost like in a vegetable situation.
Oh,
and
Sheila.
Right now, Kate, I've been told it's either a care home or have him home. So I'm having my husband home, Kate, and I'm simply wondering if you could give me some tips to try to keep my spirits up and try to ward off the dreadful depression.
Sheila, I mean, you sound like you should be giving everybody tips. I mean, it's extraordinary what you've been through. I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, the thing is that you're not alone in dealing with it. I've had so many messages from people who effectively, as you're going to find yourself, you are effectively a carer, aren't you? And it's shifted the relationship you have with your husband. And they've said to me, because I can't profess to be an expert because I'm only sort of about 2.5 weeks into this new chapter in our lives. They've said that what you do is you take it a day at a time, a cliche, but you do. And also sort of allow the kind of new relationship to emerge, because the person is still the same, and there may well be things that take you forward in a way that you never expected. I mean, it's hard to imagine, I know, because this is your husband, this is your lover, isn't it? This is the person that you turn to in moments of crisis, and that's what I've been feeling with Derek, that, you know, looking, and I'm only 5'2" and he's 6'3", and he's always been this big figure in my life that I've bounced everything off and turned to. And suddenly you're seeing them so vulnerable. So it's going to be very, very difficult.
And also, Kate, I simply can't even talk about my son to a neighbour, to anyone. I've kept it all bottled up because it's so painful to talk about.
It is too painful. And I think that I haven't honestly been able to process some of the pain yet, because I've been running on a lot of adrenaline, which I'm sure you have been, sort of keeping going.
Exactly.
And you do have to let it out, Sheila. You do, because then it will start to... Is there somebody you can talk to? I'm sure LBC have got lots of organisations.
I've spoken to Nick, actually, before.
Have you? Yeah. And
he was very good.
Because I think letting it out, and it's a bit of a sort of Oprah Winfrey style thing to say, but sort of giving yourself permission to let that pain out is actually what you have to do, because, you know, you're going through 2 huge things in this last year, in the middle of a pandemic, which has meant that you've probably not been able to see and hug some of the people that you normally could have done.
No, we weren't, no.
Oh, Sheila,
and of
it's
course,
so
as soon
difficult.
as I begin to talk about it, which I have tried to 1 or 2 lovely people, but then the tears start, and it's just so awful.
But Sheila, that is that is absolutely natural. And the fact that you've rung in today shows that you want to talk about it. And,
thank you.
And there will be people that you know that you can open up to. And don't be embarrassed if you cry. I mean,
don't fear it will totally overwhelm you. That's what I have feared in periods. I feared that once I started crying, I almost wouldn't be able to stop. And I was thinking, God, I've got to keep going because it's me and the kids and all of this going on. And I don't want to completely unravel. But actually, I think and I hope that if you find the right person, you will be able to let it out.
Yes.
And then something in you will just sort of think, OK, that's enough for now. I've let a bit out.
I mean,
and gradually you can eke it out.
You see the grandchildren, Kate, my son's children and that. And I think, oh, my God, you've got to be cheerful. Don't let the grandchildren see you depressed about their father. Do you know what I mean?
No, but it's only
But they
natural
will
to have
know that you
moments.
are sad too, and they will be feeling sad as
Yeah,
well, you know.
yeah.
And so, you know, you don't want to force them to have to cheer you up, I'm sure, but actually saying, look, I'm feeling a bit sad about your dad, they will understand.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
And there's
Yeah,
nothing
it's
wrong.
lovely to talk to you,
Well, and
Kate.
And you.
I thought how lovely to hear you. You're like kind of bubbly, which is great. And I thought, why can't I switch on like that?
I bet you do, though. Look, you're laughing and you're calling into a radio show, so you're doing it. You're
Sheila,
doing it.
we wish you all the best. Thank you so much. There's nothing wrong with a few tears.
There's
are there?
nothing wrong with tears.
There must have been moments when you literally had to howl your eyes out.
Yeah, I locked the bathroom door and howled my eyes out. And there's moments when you think, why me, isn't there?
Yeah.
But there's also moments when you think, why not me? And also when you think, actually, why not Derek survived when other people haven't survived? You know, it's a tough world. And actually, every day, nothing to do with COVID, people are facing challenging things. And actually, if you reach out, there is love there.
You made a decision, and I can't remember when this was, that you would go back to work.
Yeah.
That must have been quite a difficult thing to do. And you must have also been a little bit worried about what the public reaction might be to you doing that.
Well, it was sort of around the end of June, beginning of July, when the doctors said, so we've been living on this knife edge. Will he make it through the next minute, hour, day? And then there came the news that actually there was this, it wasn't just will he live, will he die, but there was this third area, this third challenge, which was he might never wake up, he might never come back. And when I was given the sense of not just living minute by minute, but this might go on for weeks, months, years, I looked at the children and thought, well, you know, Billy's about to start secondary school and Darcy's about to, you know, begin her GCSEs, and we can't stay in this sort of suspended animation forever. We've got to start to build a new normal. And part of that for me was going back to work. I was functionally a single mum. You know, Derek's business was his business. He wasn't earning any money because he couldn't, poor soul. And so just on a practical level, I had to start to sort of move forward, and more emotionally as well, try to find something that wasn't just crisis for us all to see a way through. And you're right, I think I thought that because the world was in crisis, people would understand that, because after all, the nurses and doctors that have been looking after Derek, they'd been going into work throughout. They'd probably lost people, or certainly had people desperately affected, including themselves. So I think people understood that sense of going on, probably more than at any other time, because everyone was having to. But yes, I guess it crosses your mind, I hope they don't think that, because, you know, we have lovely jobs, don't we? And, you know, we have lovely jobs where we don't want to just turn up and be miserable. We want to be laughing and cheering people up as well. So I guess you hope that
breakfast television.
Breakfast television, absolutely, you know, and on Smooth Radio, of course, here at Global, where you're playing music and you know, you're being people's kind of smile through the day as well. So, you know, you don't want people to think just because you're laughing about some stupidly shaped vegetable, you don't care. But I think actually in our lives, we do that all the time, don't we? We have serious things, and we then, when things are most serious, want to laugh more than ever before. So people actually have been incredible, and listeners have been incredible too.
And when you walked through the door on that first day back in the Good Morning Britain studio, did it almost feel like your first day, the butterflies were in your stomach? You were thinking, oh my God, can I still do this? Was there any of that?
Oh, well, I feel every day. I don't think, can I still do this? I think, can I do this at all? So there's always a doubt about competency at any point with me. And also, you know that more than anyone. In fact, by the way, can I just say, well, no, you know that about me.
Oh, I see.
I'm not, honestly. No, can I just say that Iain has been reading my book very sweetly before this interview, because it's not actually been published yet. Well, it's not published until Thursday.
I know.
Available to pre-order.
It's very nice
obviously.
of you to give us the first interview as well.
I know, it was lovely. It's lovely to be here and to talk to you about it. But he's already spotted a mistake, everybody.
I have.
What is my mistake?
David Steele, the Liberal leader, I can't even remember why you mentioned him, but
because one of Derek's friends, the best man at our wedding, they met when he was working for Tony and Peter. And
well, there is no E
David.
on the end of Steele.
Yeah, I know that. I can't believe that slipped through. Can I apologise?
There's so many more in my book, so I wouldn't worry about that.
I'm now going to go and comb through your books.
We've
for
got
errors.
loads of lovely texts coming in, which I'm going to read some of them out to you in a moment. It's 7:47.
Britain's Conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
7:51 on LBC. Kate Garraway with me talking about her book, The Power of Hope. Lots of lovely texts coming in. Somebody says, it doesn't actually say who it is. It's very moving listening to Kate. How does she feel when people deny COVID exists or say that it's been overhyped?
I mean, the thing is I think that your experience of COVID, and I don't think anybody's not been touched by it, whether they've been touched by the restrictions and that's led them to feeling isolated or lonely or affected their ability to earn a living or caused them worries. Everyone's been affected, and I guess you react to the thing that's affected you most. And if you're somebody who just thinks, oh gosh, I just want to get on with earning a living, or I just want to get on with having fun, or all of those things, then that feels the most important. But I suppose what I would say is that Derek had no underlying conditions, and thankfully we now know a lot more about how to treat symptoms, although we still don't have a cure, but we do have a fantastic vaccination programme. So hopefully there won't be people suffering as much. But that doesn't mean to say that we have to be carefree about it. I understand why people just want to get on with their lives and feel that it's been overhyped, because if you haven't been touched by it, you don't know. But if you have, then you want to avoid it at all costs.
I've just flicked through the whole text screen because I can either look at every text that comes in, or I can look at the ones that my producers put on the on-air screen, which are sort of slightly filtered. But I haven't seen, and this is quite rare with anyone that I interview, I haven't seen anyone saying anything bad.
Really?
Which is, I think,
That's
it's
so
brilliant.
nice
I've got
of
a load.
people.
Look, I could read 30 or 40 lovely texts out. I'll read a couple out.
Don't challenge people. They'll start sending the bad ones in.
Sue in Sheen says, can Iain pass on my best wishes and love to Kate and Derek? I'm sure there are many millions up and down the country wishing them well. So glad her husband is back home. They're all together again. I've followed their story since last year. They're a lovely family. Have nothing to add other than how much respect and admiration for Kate to have held it all together against such testing conditions. Her whole family are amazing. Now, the fact that you have been willing to effectively open up your life to everyone, I mean, that was a big decision to make, because you must have wondered about what the reaction might be. And also publishing a book, there will be people who say, well, how can she publish a book about it? This should all be private.
You're right, and there will be people that think that, and I can sort of understand that. And a lot of the moments in this book are incredibly private. Things that I haven't shared before, things, because often that's when, in the private little moments, in the sort of panicky wee small hours, is when, devastation hits, isn't it? But I suppose, I have benefited greatly from having a job on TV and radio all my life. It's a wonderful honour to have that position, I think. And because of that, people know you. If you've been there in their bedrooms where they're brushing their teeth and putting the mascara on and getting dressed for 20 odd years. Yeah, exactly. For 20 odd years, then you do know people, and I feel like I know them as well. So people have really, really shared with me, and because Derek got sick right at the beginning, and because in a sense he has got sick from something that's been a global news story, a lot of what we've been through has been shared already. And so it felt strange. You couldn't really pop up on GMB and pretend nothing had happened, or return to Smooth and just say, oh, by the way, I've had a bit of time off, let's crack on. You sort of have to allow people to know what's been going on, because we've all been part of it together, haven't we? So hopefully people understand, and I have tried to do right by Derek and by his family and by the people who love him, because I am aware that knowing Derek too, would want to tell his own story, and may still. Let's hope one day he can sit here in this studio.
Well, I would love nothing better than that.
I know, wouldn't that be fantastic? And, and tell me off for making the house untidy, and tell me off for not telling it the way he'd want to tell it, hopefully. I'd love to be told off by him right now.
You mentioned earlier your new life.
Yeah.
Have you come to terms with the fact that it inevitably things cannot go back to how they were? Even if he recovers, it will not necessarily, it won't be the same as it was. Is that something that you think about a lot?
It absolutely won't be the same as it was. I don't think it'll be the same for any of us, really. I think we're all changed by this. I think everybody, we have been through, as a nation, strangely, we've all been through something together in isolation. It is the strangest experience, which I think we will look back on in decades to come. People will study in schools and we will wonder how we all lived through it. Hopefully we'll get the chance to look back on it, and hopefully it will just be history and we won't have to live a strange new life forever. But it has changed us all. In terms of what exactly it means for us, I still don't really know. You know, I don't know what our family life will be. I hope that it can be with Derek in the home. I hope that we can continue caring for him in the home. I hope that's best for him, as it feels like it is right now. I hope that he will find a way, and we will help him to find a way to be more present. I mean, he is a dominating person, but he's going to be changed. I mean, at the very least, he is going to be traumatised. And at the worst, he may never change from this. Although I have to check myself, that isn't the worst, is it? Because he's still here. You know, so it's very unknown. It's a strange thing. I'm a bit of a planner. I'm a bit of a geek. I liked making copious amounts of notes about things and planning things. I'm not necessarily on the surface particularly organised, but I do always have plans, and I'm quite happy for those to change. But I like to have a sense of where I'm going, and this has been a free fall, you know, and still is.
From what you described earlier, there seemed to be almost a thought of the locked-in syndrome, which we've heard about before.
Yeah.
Are you constantly searching for the key there? To try and find something that gets through and can unlock him out of this situation?
Absolutely. I feel I am, and I'm doing it constantly, sort of like a journalist, constantly researching new ways, new techniques, new things that people every day are discovering. And there's a world of wonderful activity out there amongst the medical professionals, constantly looking for things that can help, you know, borrowed from other diseases. And also, on an emotional level, I'm constantly looking for flickers in the eye. You know, he mentioned the other day that he liked my dress. And I was like so flabbergasted because it was almost a sentence, you know. And it was actually a new dress as well. So he was right. And he also remembered that I like flattery and other things, you know. So I thought there's lots of things on this ground.
You're female, Kate.
Yeah, exactly. And there's and also little things where stuff that I've said to him, I can see that he's consciously trying to do. We're trying to get him to, he has got some movement, and we're trying to get him to make that movement purposeful, and seeing if we can trigger memory of what he's doing and how he can do it. And I can see me banging on about things to him and him sort of trying to do it. And you know, there's definitely a connection. And he's told me he loves me, you know.
That must have meant so much.
Oh my God, it's huge, isn't it? I mean,
I vowed to get to the end of this hour without shedding a tear, but you're nearly setting me off with that one.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I can imagine what a moment that
you know,
was.
when you said, you know, I love you, it's unimaginable, isn't it? Because I don't know if he remembers me or who I am, or if I'm a disembodied voice or someone that's caring.
He wouldn't say that if he didn't know who you were.
I don't think so. I hope not. And I hope that he can be able to express that love for me and for all the people that he loves, and for his children and for his family. I hope he gets the chance to express it in the way he knows he wants to. You're getting me going now, Iain. Oh, you're evil, aren't you? But we're lucky to have the chance to, aren't we? We're lucky. Derek is lucky to have the chance that so many brilliant health professionals have been able to steer him through.
And they shine through in your book, the
Oh.
conversations that you have with
Amazing.
them. I mean, I don't think we realise how lucky we are to have such people. There's one that you talk about when he was having, is it the EMCO thing?
ECMO,
The guy
yeah.
that was organising all of that, and you said you came off the phone to him the first time, you said, he sounds so young.
I know. He sounded so young, and I realised that he was trying to help me save a dad. And I came off the phone and I saw him, I heard him, and I looked at my children and thought, this lad, this somebody else's young son is trying to help save somebody else's dad. And I realised that all across the country, mums and dads and men and women were desperately trying to save, you know, everyone else's loved ones.
I'm going to finish with a text.
Okay.
Fantastic with Kate. I'm sitting in a camper van, first day dry off alcohol, feeling so much better listening to the both of you.
Oh.
See, that's going to set me off as well. I think I better finish here. Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk
It's
to you.
been a
Kate's
pleasure
book
to be here.
is The Power of Hope, a story of love, fear and never giving up, published by Bantam Press in hardback at £20. Kate Garraway, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to LBC. It's 2 minutes past 8.